All right, everyone, good morning, afternoon, or evening for where you're tuning in. Last year, I spoke on AI as a collaborator and shared the recipe and spec ops frameworks, and since then, advancements have only accelerated in the direction predicted. Earlier this year, I published my second book, Resonance, expanding on those topics and also exploring how the way we work will change. The second iteration of that is coming out a little bit later this year. But if this is the first time we've met, quick intro. My name is Tanmay Kayande, and for the last decade, I've been the trusted advisor to executives from startups to SMBs to enterprise-scale organizations. I've found patterns in the architectures of those that lead their field. I know because I've designed and developed those systems and processes using models and frameworks to positively affect billions of users. I'm looking forward to sharing these insights with you. During the day, I'm at Google leading their enterprise architecture and implementing practical applications of their no-code AI tools to streamline the way Google works. Speaking of which, quick disclaimer, nothing I'm sharing reflects the company's views. I'm not representing them in any way. The content of this talk, everything which I'm about to talk about, is publicly available material. After hours, you'll find me in Austin, Texas, connecting with the community, seeking faster paths to progress. My mission is to help people like you use tech to work less and do more. For our time today, I'm going to assume, given the audience, that you're already familiar with AI as a term, albeit overused, and generally, hopefully, probably use it to some capacity to lighten the load of your day. Less than talk, beyond intelligence. Because at the center of all this tech is the people. The point of technology is to reduce the effort any person needs to put in to do any one thing. And that's the whole point of tech, that there's stuff I need or want to do, but it takes too much time or effort. So let's find a way to work less and do more. You're going to hear that phrase a bit today. As I was writing Resonance, I was stuck trying to figure out how do the recipe and spec ops frameworks elegantly click together and amplify each other when united. For those who didn't hear about these frameworks, the first framework is about approaching your tech stack, especially regarding your AI toolkit. This is the recipe framework. And the second framework is about approaching your people strategy with the future in mind. This is where I advocate you not to cull, but cultivate your staff. This is the spec ops framework. Going a bit deeper. With the recipe framework, you need the right ingredients at the highest quality you can get them. In our case, we're talking about AI tools. There's a bunch out there, but generally you want to use the least number of tools to see where the architecture of the tool might need your business processes to evolve to. There are many frameworks out there around how to prompt, but in the beginning especially, keep things simple. The prep work is creating artifacts and assets towards what your end objective is. The way, for example, how you cut an onion will change the flavor of a dish. How you prompt and the resources you prepare will affect the quality of your output. The actual cook or execution of the workflow, you can tell I like food, is my favorite part because these are the workflow processes of how you're connecting your tools, where the output of one prompt or tool becomes the input for the next. There's an order to the flow where outputs compound on each other. And the final plating is the desired end output, which you, the chef of this flow, can tune your perspective and put that special X factor polish on it. With the spec ops framework, small teams of AI augmented specialists can deliver potentially 1000x leverage returns. You want to cultivate your best people to learn to use the tools available and reduce their manual work. And this seems obvious until you try to implement it. Here's a question for you. If you told your team that in 90 days, they need to maintain their same degree of output, however, they can only work 3 days a week for at most 4 hours a day, what would your team need to do to achieve this? I would probably say eliminate emails, minimize meetings, asynchronous collaboration, document workflow and heuristics, simplify process, and automate all the above, and explore recipes to handle more off their plate. Hyper-leveraged specialists able to operate out of the corporate box of this is how things work will be the ones who lead organizations into the future. Both of these are explored more in detail in Resonance, which is the name of the unifying framework I developed when writing that book. For the Resonance framework, the short of it is, when you combine the right people with the right tools, you realize an amplification of capabilities transcending what's conventionally possible. Last year, I was working on this nights and weekend project called Hyperdrive, where I was exploring the idea of how these Gen AI capabilities are changing what we work on and how. Since today's DevOps, Scrum, Agile, Kanban, these can all be traced back to the Toyota production system designed by Taichi Ono, I was curious what a new methodology might look like with today's tools in mind, respecting both the origins of how we got here, maintaining the enhancements of the respective iterations developed, however, without the limitations that they each face. Anecdotally, I've yet to hear of anyone experiencing a daily stand-up that is consistently a great use of their time, but I digress. Combining this hyperdrive exploration with the two frameworks I presented, I found myself circling the metaphor of an organization that runs smooth enough to hum. Now, my love for music and interest in physics met at the idea of resonance, which is how it got its name. Like various sections of an orchestra, there are various sections of a business. Each instrument family has a variety of players and with their own instrument and their skill to use it. Like spec ops operators, you want the best at the helm in your first seats. Like a good recipe, you want the cook to follow the flow, certainly. However, their music is only going to be as good as what's written and instructed. The best players with great music are why thousands flock to the famous orchestras around the world. Organizations that are resonant lead the field. Currently, I'm exploring an idea at the fringe of this space that, if we were to tie back to the musician analogy, would be this. Why is it that certain musicians interpret the music that's written and play it with their masterful perspective, where we can feel that technical mastery transcending into an artistic vision? This idea that technical mastery transcends into an artistic vision is what I'm calling the Kayande principle, and building a much more robust foundation around it. The principle ties back to our topic of moving beyond intelligence. You and the subject matter experts who report to you have experience that can't be artificially manufactured. You can train and tune models to output beyond capabilities of any team of people, and attempts are already underway. However, the final decision will and must fall to a person. This is the value of experience in the age of AI. In our world saturated with information, it's not just what you know, it's how you use it. Those who can leverage their experience and augment themselves with AI are the ones who will truly succeed. Think about it like this. AI supercharges your strengths and mitigates your weaknesses. Let's make this more tangible. Imagine an ecosystem where, from the recipe framework, our AI tools are the fertile ground. The spec ops framework, you're the specialist with unique experience, and in this metaphor, the idea you have is the seed. From the resonance framework, we combine the two and the combination bears fruit. The Kayande principle in this is where, from your clarity around your perspective, based on the foundation of your mastery, offers a clarity on where to plant the seed, in what conditions, around what risks and opportunities, knowing how likely what is to occur. And this transcends that input, process, output of a resonant system. Let me put it like this. If you ask someone else to do the same task you do with the same tools and instructions, you'd probably still get a different result than if you did it yourself. Often at a margin, hopefully negligible. At scale, however, this difference materially compounds. Here's a visual of that idea at play. Until now, on the left side, we'll see that most people have a pretty linear relationship with the tools they use. You have a certain task in mind with a single input and a single desired output. Write me an email, summarize the text, rewrite my message, answer my question, research a topic, and so forth. You run out to the LLM, get an output, and run back. A quick task, a point solution. Imagine if, instead of only just going out for the thing you need and when you need it, you invested some time building a bit of infrastructure. You start adding source farming to your workflows. You start transcribing key meetings so they produce text data. You add papers, presentations, websites, YouTube videos you're referencing, and everything you're about to output into a single file to reference later. What if you could also start building out artifacts the tool can use and reuse for future work it will do? You could ask the tool to generate templates with suggestions, outlining the kind of information you should have in each section of that template. Then by referencing the artifacts and enriching them with the sources, you might generate some sort of an asset. This asset right here will combine basically all of the artifacts, all of the information from the sources, and then enrich it with the use of the LLM. But wait, there's more. If you really want to get fancy with it, what if you reuse these assets as the output you've input, and then for a more complex output that needs to cross-reference the other assets it's interconnected with across the board? Like stacking logs and writing poems, this kind of output requires a bit of forethought and much clarity on your desired end output to build backwards to it. In the past, these input-output exchanges relied more on the LLM's internal knowledge. Going forward, the LLM acts more as a hub for you to stay central to orchestrating that workflow. The LLM isn't just generating an output, but also accessing, processing, and integrating information from a wider ecosystem. The final asset you'll get will be more accurate, relevant, and comprehensive, most importantly, contextual to your scenario. This is far beyond intelligence. It's more art than science and focused on how far and clear a person like you can take your vision and how well you can augment yourself with this tech around you. Simply put, it's a matter of taste. Now, taste curation's a conversation that's been brewing in the world of design. As you might imagine, their industry has felt the seismic shifts across their tech landscape. I used to work with a team of designers when I was over at Accenture who preached the importance of human-centric design. And that idea is something that engineers and architects would benefit to adopt. The conversation happening in the AI ethics space mirrors this notion, focusing on keeping a human in the loop. Let's leverage compliance into a competitive feature. Ultimately, it's the clarity of taste that will distinguish the results in efficacy and outcomes one AI-augmented person can deliver over another. Depending on how this resonates with you, the best and worst part is there's no hack for taste, no shortcut to cultivate it. You can follow the general principles, get that first theoretical 80% down. There's no right answer for that remaining 20%, and that's what makes all the difference. That's where form rises to contend with function. We'll talk about form and function in a bit, but let's stay on how taste will launch us beyond intelligence. I'll summarize this tweet by Scott Belsky. Taste is more valuable than skills. Fewer people have it, and it's the differentiation factor when most skill work can be done by compute. Using these AI tools is like a superpower, and if I might be so bold as to quote Syndrome from The Incredibles, when everyone's super, no one will be. Now that's a scary thought. Taste, however, can save the day. It's the je ne sais quoi element that's uniquely human and transcends the purely functional. AI can tell us if something is correct, but it takes a person with taste to know if it's right. These tools that are being developed have such amazing raw potential. However, it's up to you to imbue them with purpose and direction. But how do you curate taste? I'll say it again. The hard truth is there's no shortcut, and that pains me to admit it. But I also find it reassuring that in our instant world where reality is blending with science fiction, there's still a remnant keystone of the old world that hasn't been diluted. To develop taste in anything, I'll put a general guidance I found in another way. Start with first principles. Understand the fundamentals. Conceptualize the components, and that'll get you 80% of the way. The remaining 20%, however, is where the disparity in mastery presents a gradient. This 20% is cultivated with immersion, through overcoming obstacles, time spent critically thinking, and an openness to refine, iterate, and pivot where needed. What makes taste this high leverage differentiator? Trends here, from vibe coding to model context protocols, the direction for advancement is difficult to predict. However, the democratization of tools is increasingly opening to non-technical audiences to use this tech for their needs and informing the creators of this tech where the desire lines for progress really are. Two people with the same tools can yield drastically different outcomes, where the first might approach the tech linearly, like the input-output we talked about earlier. The latter might yield a much more contextual approach. And let's take the same tools, same people using the same tools the same way. So building ecosystems around the tool, the second person could still dramatically outperform the first by their creativity, intuition, experience, all of which are a factor of taste. This shift in our current paradigm of looking at tech as strictly the engineer's realm is shifting. The greatest engineers and artists often find themselves at home in each other's domain. This is why, with the Kayande principle, I'm aiming to show how form is rising to contend with function, and proficiency is transcending into artistry. Elizabeth Goodspeed is the editor-at-large at the It's Nice That online publication. It's focused on design. She wrote a viral article about AI and taste. I'd like to share a few excerpts with you. Regarding AI generation, she said, AI image generation is essentially a truncated exercise in taste, a product of knowing which inputs and keywords to feed the image mashup machine, and an eye to identify which outputs contain any semblance of artistry. All that's to say, AI itself can't generate good taste for you. Expanding on this idea of taste, she continues, taste takes work. Though good taste is often expressed through a single output, it's typically shaped by the exposure to a variety of diverse inputs. The common theme heard amongst iconic tasteful creatives is how often they look outside their field for inspiration. The architect inspired by nature, the clothing designer inspired by anime, the illustrator inspired by medieval tapestries. She concludes, developing taste is an exercise in vulnerability. It requires you to trust your own instincts and preferences, even when they don't align with the current trends or the tastes of your peers. Because while having taste is cool, taste itself reflects a certain type of uncool earnestness, a commitment to one's own obsessions and quirks. Find your taste and everyone else will catch up eventually. But maybe not AI, Her words, not mine. With this, we've been discussing taste as that essential human element that elevates and distinguishes. But let's shift gears. Perhaps you've heard the maxim, form follows function. Now, this came about in the 19th century when Louis Sullivan was insisting that the design of an object should primarily be dictated by its purpose. Connecting this back to our tech landscape, that tools, code, and output should be driven primarily by their intended purpose, and anything extra is superfluous, trivial, and unnecessary. This sounds like a reasonable idea. In fact, especially after World War II, there were many constraints around raw materials, available people, and capital. The idea that form follows function really took off as the need for efficient, mass-produced solutions led to designs being stripped down to their essentials. Dieter Rams and the Bauhaus movement later coined less but better. They set 12 design principles. They emphasized the simplicity of utility. And you see here the connection between Bauhaus and Apple's design language. This idea eventually paved the way for minimalism, which is, I'm sure y'all are familiar with, a style that celebrated the starkness and absence of ornamentation. When you're surrounded by the chaos or cluttered, this is a great thing, as you rein in the chaos and where you only have a few things left. And you can focus on having those few things exceptionally well. So let's talk about your tech stacks. No, just kidding. But think about it this way. How many different tools and screens do we need to toggle through to get any one thing done? Considering the proliferation of microservices against the limitations of monolithic platforms, things get complex pretty fast. So, can code be beautiful? Can an algorithm be elegant? I mean, we've strived for efficiency, for optimization. We've lauded designs for their frugality. We've reduced the variables of the world around us to the essential. Essentially, since the turn of the millennium, clean, minimal aesthetics have been the shorthand for tech aspirations. And it should not be, however, the end state. Here's the thing. While functionality is crucial, it's not the whole story. I have a counterproposal. I invite you to consider and share that what if, instead of form follows function, we approach our work with the idea that function features form. Again, I get it. You have so much on your plate that you want the crux of the point. You want to move forward faster. And AI is getting you that. It's also leading to a boom of creation where the barrier to create anything of value is so low that nearly anything can be created and be made to appear thoroughly credible. And this raises a critical question, ethics. Now that we can, we need to ask if we should. Our hyper-focus on function has lost all form. However, we use these same tools to bring back form as a feature of the functions we need without materially increasing friction to delivery. We're about to get really far beyond intelligence with where we're going, which will be about at the limit of the time we have today. So to recap, we've revisited the recipe and spec ops frameworks shared last year. I've introduced the resonance framework and how these three frameworks built the foundation for the Kayande principle. We walked through the visual on the changing relationship between us and these AI tools, specifically about building an ecosystem around the tool rather than a linear relationship that we have today. Then we went beyond and talked about taste as the differentiator for where everyone can do anything, and I invited you to champion the idea that function features form. Every culture grows a counterculture that grows a culture to counter that. The lack of understanding breeds fertile ground for fear. Those who don't live in this tech world, who aren't technologists, are unsure and polarized towards where they see AI development taking us. Evolution defaults us to pessimism, cynicism, and skepticism. If we aren't careful and responsible in our eagerness to grow, these concerns could prove true. Thankfully, there's a couple countercultures that see a path where we can move towards a better future. Hopecore and Solarpunk are expressions of this shift. Brace yourselves, hold on to your reflexes, consider without any commitment for accepting what I'm about to share, because I know it's going to sound woo-woo until you really consider the implications of these ideas' applications. Solarpunk, in contrast to the better-known cyberpunk, envisions a future where technology and sustainability can coexist. Innovation serves to enhance our surroundings and uplift the quality of the human condition. Trillions of dollars are already being poured into this vision today by resource-constrained countries in East Asia, Middle East, Scandinavia, and more. And this path forward rejects the stark functionality and features the form for a happy life to become broadly accessible for mass populations. Remember in the beginning when I underlined the purpose of technology? It's to help us work less and do more of whatever we'd rather do. Hope is good. Hope Core is an ideology that emphasizes how optimism, community, and collaboration can overcome the cynic detachment that's creeped into our world. It rejects the idea that tech is a zero-sum game and challenges that progress doesn't have to come at the cost of human connection and our emotional and mental well-being. You'll notice even the voices we prefer for our Gen AI tools often feature warmth and empathy, underlining exactly how much we need it. As the patrons of the future, we can shape a better tomorrow with the decisions we make today. We're moving to a state beyond intelligence, as AI is just the baseline. Mastery, orchestration, and taste, these are the things that are going to define tomorrow's leaders. AI is your amplifier, but only if you know how to wield it. So if today's talk sparked ideas, challenged assumptions, or opened new possibilities, let's keep this conversation going. I'm happy to connect over LinkedIn. Message me with your biggest insight. Let's explore how you can work less and do more. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Tanmay. This was very insightful, great insights in there. There's a couple of questions in the chat. Is Josh Olson is asking, so this is an argument where each company will have LLM of their own, so they can have the LLM hub at center of their org decision systems. Is that the case?
The argument which I'm making, so there's the whole buy versus build conversation of, do you use already existing LLMs, access their APIs, or do you build a brand new LLM from scratch? That isn't really the argument which I'm making in this. In the future, we're probably going to see a mix. We'll see which one wins out over the long run, seeing which companies can get very competitive with whatever they're using. The argument being made here is, even if everyone's using the same LLM API, it's the differentiation in what a company is able to do is in their people being able to use the tool rather than the capability and capacity of the tool itself. The differentiating factor, the competitive factor, is going to be how well your people are equipped and augmented with these tools rather than the tools themselves. Often in our world, we find us very focused on, here's the latest tool, here's the latest capability, here's the coolest new shiny thing coming out, without first understanding, well, are our systems and processes capable of being able to adopt it? Are we, well, yes, for our customer-facing side, we're doing cool things, but are our internal operations improving? One of the big things which I've been working on, especially this year, is focusing on internal operations of where do people spend the most amount of time doing manual work, not just repetitive work. I mean, that's RPA, that's automation. You can do things without AI, but the actual work where they have to spend a lot of the time thinking to just get it up to the first draft of whatever the idea is. How do you reduce that time frame so that way the polishing and then the refinement and the tuning, if we go back to that pyramid example of that final 20%, that's where we need the people to be shifting and changing the trajectory of what these tools do rather than the first 80%.
I think we are in the same mode, me and you, Tanmay. I mean, you're in Google and get excited about the new technologies, new tools, and it's important to remind everybody that, you know, the people is the key differentiator in any of these things, because these are the tools, maybe the latest and the greatest, but the actual people makes the difference. Because the good thing about it, which I love in the old days, the technology and the tools may be limited, you know, may have a limited access to certain people or certain group of people or certain, you needed finances to have it. That's not the case any longer, as everybody have the same tools. What makes the difference is the people who are using it.
Absolutely. One of my favorite examples for that is the tech we have in our pockets, our phones, are way more powerful and capable than all the tech NASA had to get us to the moon.
Yes, exactly.
So
there's one more question. We may end up having an AI marketplace, AI agents, integrations, etc. Is a LinkedIn user is asking that. What is your take on this?
Could you clarify the question?
We may end up having an AI marketplace where AI agents, integration, etc., can be regulated.
Sure, it might happen. I mean, it's already happening in the GPT marketplace, and what people are already building with their pre-tuned APIs, or people are already building their own agents. If you go on Instagram, That's Instagram and LinkedIn are probably the two spots where I'm seeing most
Sure.
of the trends of where AI is going. You're already seeing people selling AI agencies or agent startups where it's like, hey, I've customized an agent to do all of your customer service or all of your sales calls. Again, it's down to the person who's building that agent, who's refining exactly how good that agent might be. And then, sure, yes, there's absolutely a marketplace already out there, and it's only going to get more competitive because now you can get into a point where, and we're headed there, of you need fewer and fewer people to do more and more things. But that also means the people which you have, let's say you have 100 people, instead of reducing them down to 10 to do the work of 100, you can take those same 100 people and expand them to do the work of 1,000, 10,000.
Yeah.
But that marketplace itself already exists, and it's only going to get more competitive. I
Yes.
wouldn't say it's too late to jump into it, but it's more of the clarity of where are you trying to take that thing, or the vision of what does the end output of that look like. That's going to be what makes all the difference, at least for how successful you're going to be with it.
Yeah, obviously, because it's a new technology and new things, it takes a while before like established protocols to how the agents are talking to each other and how they're going to maintain the long-running and autonomous agents, etc. But that is coming up very fast, and it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, this is the early days of agentic AI architectures that we are seeing from all different companies out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, and one of the big things just to voice is right now we're exploring, hey, can it do it? But we should also, can an AI agent do this kind of task functionality? Can it do certain kind of work? But we should also be making sure on the back end that are the agents able to access only the information that they should be able to access, or are they able to access everything? What's happening with that data? How is user data being protected? All of these kind of things also need to be considerations, and they're often afterthoughts after, hey, we can do this really cool thing.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, but let's also protect our users while we're doing it.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be talking about the some failures and challenges that we've seen after this session on mine. Tanmay, thank you very much. This was very insightful.